My grandfather locked the office door, unbuckled his belt, and said breathlessly, "The inheritance will be yours if you sit on Grandpa's lap right now." I was 19 years old and my mother was dying. He demanded a disgusting price for her life. But what this monster didn't know is that I had a secret weapon in my coat pocket. Hi, my dear ones. My name is Margaret Sullivan. I'm 52 years old today, and I live here in Cedar Falls, Iowa, the same town where I was born and raised. Right now, I'm here in my kitchen, making some peach and fig preserves from fruit I picked from the backyard this morning. The sweet smell of the syrup boiling on the stove calms me, you know? It's a recipe I learned from my grandmother Dorothy, a woman who taught me that strength has nothing to do with yelling. It has to do with knowing the right time to act. I started making these preserves about 5 years ago, after I retired from my job as an administrative assistant at City Hall. At first it was just to keep busy, but today it's become almost a ritual. Every summer, I pick the fruit from the orchard, wash them one by one carefully, peel them slowly while listening to the radio, and spend the whole afternoon here at this old stove, stirring the pots. The steam rises, fogs up the kitchen windows, and I find myself thinking about life. The preserves line up in the pantry with those checkered fabric lids I sew myself. It seems silly, but each of these little jars carries a piece of peace that I earned through so much sweat and tears. My kitchen isn't big or modern. No, it's simple. White tiles yellowed by time, a 4-burner stove that's been with me for over 20 years, a formica table with metal chairs that squeak when someone sits down. But this is where I feel safe. This is where I breathe deeply and give thanks for being alive, for having won, for having managed to transform the poison of the past into the sweetness of fruit. Oh, and before I continue my story, I wanted to make a special request to you who are watching me now. If you're enjoying listening to me, click that red subscribe button down there, okay? And turn on the notification bell too. Otherwise, you'll miss the next stories from this grandma here. And tell me here in the comments, what town are you watching me from? And what time of day did you find this video from Margaret? In the morning having your coffee, after lunch relaxing, or in the late afternoon when the sun is setting? I always read all the comments, my dears, and I'm so happy to know where you're from and when you stop to listen to this grandma's stories. Tell me, okay? Let's create a chain of love and strength. Well, what I'm going to tell you today isn't easy. It's a story I kept buried deep in my chest for many years because it hurt too much to remember. But today, I know I need to speak, because if my story can save even one person going through something similar, then it was worth reliving every second of that nightmare. I'm going to tell you about the most terrible and, at the same time, most victorious day of my life. The day when I was 19 years old and discovered that my own grandfather, a powerful man respected throughout the town, was a predator disguised as a patriarch. The day he tried to use me as currency to save the life of his own daughter, my mother, who was dying. But I'll also tell you how God gave me an idea that saved not only me, but exposed that man for what he really was in front of the entire family. It was in 1992, right here in Cedar Falls, on a Sunday afternoon that started with a birthday party and ended with the truth screaming louder than any lie. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and come with me on this journey. Because what happened in that house needs to be told. I was born in 1973, on a cold June afternoon here in Cedar Falls. My mother, Elizabeth Sullivan, was a beautiful, delicate woman, with those brown eyes full of dreams and hopes. She had been raised in luxury, as the only daughter of Colonel Richard and Dorothy, in a huge mansion in the historic district that still exists today, an old 2-story construction with those white columns at the entrance and an immense garden full of hydrangeas and rose bushes. But when she fell in love with my father, David Thompson, a middle-class accountant who worked in a modest office, Grandpa Richard nearly had a fit. He thought his daughter deserved better, a doctor, a wealthy rancher, I don't know. But my mother was stubborn, sweetheart. She married my father anyway, and Grandpa, with his wounded pride, turned his back on her for a while. We lived in a simple wooden house painted white, there in the East Side neighborhood, far from my grandparents' mansion. It was a small house with 3 rooms, a living room that served for everything, 2 cramped bedrooms, a kitchen with a wood-burning stove that my mother loved, and a bathroom in the back. In the backyard, there was an apple tree that gave sweet fruit every fall, and some garden beds where my mother planted lettuce, onions, and parsley. I loved that house, even though it was humble. The smell of homemade bread in the morning, the sound of wood crackling in the stove, my father coming home in the late afternoon with that smell of paper and office ink. When I was 5 years old, my little sister Emily was born. She was tiny, with blonde curls that looked like springs, and she cried all night long. I remember waking up and seeing my mother walking down the hallway with Emmy in her arms, singing those old lullabies softly. My mother was very affectionate with us, you know. She made a point of combing my hair every day before school, tied it with colorful ribbons, and always sent me off looking neat, even though we didn't have much money. My father was more serious, quieter, but he was a hard-working and honest man. He left early and came back at nightfall, tired, but always with a smile when he saw me running to hug him. Childhood in Cedar Falls was good, my dears. We played in the street without fear. I had a friend named Lisa who lived 3 houses down, and we spent entire afternoons playing house, hopscotch drawn on the ground with chalk, jumping rope. In winter, which here is quite harsh, we wrapped ourselves in blankets and drank hot chocolate that my mother made with milk and brown sugar. On Saturday mornings, my father would take Emily and me for ice cream at the parlor on Main Street, and that was the most special thing in the world. But there's one detail from my childhood that I need to tell, because that's where it all started, even though I was a child and didn't really understand. When I was about 7 years old, my grandfather Richard finally forgave my mother for marrying my father. He invited us to lunch at his mansion on a Sunday. I remember entering that huge house with marble floors that echoed every step, crystal chandeliers on the ceiling, dark, heavy wooden furniture. Everything smelled of polish and money. My grandmother Dorothy greeted me with a tight hug and kissed me on the forehead. She was an elegant lady, always in silk dresses and those pearl necklaces, but she had a sweet and welcoming manner. Grandpa Richard was different. He was a tall, strong man with a well-trimmed gray mustache and those cold blue eyes that seemed to pierce through you. He smoked cigars all the time and always had a glass of whiskey in his hand, even in the morning. At that first lunch, he looked me up and down and said, "This girl takes after you, Elizabeth. She's going to be a beautiful woman when she grows up." And then he picked me up, sat me on his lap in his armchair, and kept running his hand through my hair in a way that, I don't know, gave me a chill in my stomach. My mother didn't notice anything wrong, but I felt it. Even at 7 years old, I felt it. After that day, we started visiting my grandparents' house almost every Sunday. Grandpa Richard was treated like royalty in town. He had farms, land, investments. He was friends with the mayor, the sheriff, everyone important. At the dinner table, he spoke loudly, told business stories, laughed in that forced way. And always, always, when I passed near him, he'd call me. "Come here, my pretty little granddaughter. Give Grandpa a kiss." And I'd go, because I was polite, because my mother told me to, because he was my grandfather. But I didn't like it. He'd hold my face hard, kiss me on the cheek for way too long, and stare at me with that look that today I know what it was. But back then I was a child. I couldn't name it. My father and mother were always worried about money. His office wasn't doing well, and with 2 young daughters, the bills were tight. My mother did sewing for others, fixed neighbors' clothes, sold sweets at the farmer's market. We never went hungry, no, but there was never anything left over either. And Grandpa Richard liked to rub it in our faces. He gave expensive gifts to Emily and me, imported dolls, brand-name clothes, but always accompanied by a comment to my father. "David, I hope you can give my daughter a better life. For now, I'll have to help, right?" My father would turn red with shame, swallow hard, and not respond. and I saw the sadness in his eyes. When I turned 12, I had already grown quite a bit. My mother started teaching me to be a young lady, you know, to sit with my legs crossed, to take care of my hair, to dress properly. And it was at that time that Grandpa Richard started looking at me differently. It wasn't a grandfather's look anymore. It was something else. He started calling me alone to his office to give me a special gift, he'd say. And inside, he'd make me sit on his lap while he opened the drawer and handed me money, always saying, "This is just our secret, okay, Margaret? You're Grandpa's favorite granddaughter." I didn't like it, but I also didn't understand that it was wrong. I just felt it was strange, uncomfortable. But who was I to question the most powerful man in town? And so I grew up between my grandfather's suffocating affection and the innocence of my childhood days. I played in the street, went to school, helped my mother at home, and on Sundays endured those visits to the mansion where I felt something was wrong but couldn't explain what. The years passed, my dears, and I was becoming a young woman. When I turned 15 in 1988, I was no longer that little girl with braids. I had grown, developed, and Grandpa Richard's looks had changed completely. It wasn't that proud grandfather look anymore. It was something else. It was a look that made me want to disappear, hide, shrink inside my own skin. At family parties, he always found a way to be near me. He'd put his heavy hand on my shoulder, squeeze me against him in hugs that lasted too long, whisper in my ear things like, "My little granddaughter is getting more beautiful every day, a grown woman now." I felt disgusted, but at the same time I felt guilty for feeling disgusted. After all, he was my grandfather. He was the man who helped my family with money. He was respected by everyone. Who was I to find that strange? I thought the problem was with me, that I was thinking bad things about a good person. That's the trap, sweetheart. The abuser always makes the victim think she's the one who's wrong. When I was 16, my father lost his job at the office. The crisis of the early 90s was beginning, and many small businesses closed. My father tried to start his own accounting business, but it didn't work out. He took out loans, got into debt, and in a few months was bankrupt. Our financial situation plummeted. There were months when there wasn't enough food at home. My mother cried hidden in the kitchen, and my father became quieter, sadder, more defeated. Emily, who was 11 at the time, didn't really understand why suddenly we couldn't buy new notebooks for school anymore. And it was at that time that Grandpa Richard became our savior. He started paying our household bills, electricity, water, rent. Everything went through his hands, and every time he gave money to my father, he'd look at me and say, "You're lucky to have family that helps, right, Margaret? Family is everything, and family helps each other, in various ways." The way he spoke gave me chills. But my father was so grateful, so humiliated by the situation, that he didn't notice anything. I remember one specific day. I must have been about 17. It was winter, freezing cold, and I was at my grandparents' mansion because my mother had sent me to pick up an envelope with money that Grandpa was going to give to pay the overdue rent. When I arrived, my grandmother Dorothy had gone out to a church meeting, and only Grandpa was home in his office. That office of dark wood, smelling of cigars and old leather, with that huge armchair where he sat as if he were a king on his throne. He called me to come in and close the door. My heart raced. He went to the desk, opened the drawer, and took out the envelope with the money. But instead of handing it to me, he placed the envelope on the table and said, "Margaret, you're growing up. You're becoming a beautiful woman." "Do you know how much Grandpa spends every month on your family?" I answered quietly, looking at the floor. "I don't know, Grandpa, but we're very grateful." He got up from the chair, came to me, stood very close. I smelled the strong smell of whiskey on his breath, mixed with cigar smoke. He put his hand on my chin and lifted my face to look into his eyes. "Gratitude doesn't pay bills, my granddaughter, but affection does." "Do you give me affection?" I didn't quite understand what he was asking, but I was afraid to say no, so I answered, "Of course, Grandpa. I really like you." He smiled in that crooked way that made me nauseous and said, "Then give me a really tight hug, a real hug." I gave him the hug, and he squeezed me against his body in a way that wasn't a grandfather's hug. He ran his hand down my back, down to my waist, pulled me hard. I felt that he was different, excited. And then he whispered in my ear, "Grandpa really likes you, Margaret. You're special. And when someone is special to me, I take care of them. But I expect that person to also take care of me, the way I need." I pulled away quickly, grabbed the envelope from the table, and ran out of that office without looking back. I got home shaking, sweating, wanting to vomit. But I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Colonel Richard, the richest and most respected man in Cedar Falls, abusing his own granddaughter. They'd say I was crazy, that I was making it up, that I was a troubled teenager wanting attention. So I kept it to myself, like a rotten secret rotting inside me. The months passed, and his behavior got worse. Every time I went to the mansion to get money, he found a way to be alone with me. He'd call me to the office, lock the door, force me to sit on his lap. He'd run his hand through my hair, my face, my neck. He'd say disgusting things, whispered, always reminding me that he was paying the bills at home, that without him we'd starve, that I should be grateful. I learned to always go accompanied when I needed to go there. I'd take Emily with me, or wait for my mother to be there. But it didn't always work out. And then, in March 1992, something happened that changed everything. My mother started feeling sick. She had always had heart problems since she was young, a condition that ran in the family, but nothing serious. But suddenly she started having shortness of breath, chest pains, fainting spells. My father took her to the public hospital, and after several tests, the diagnosis came like a punch in the stomach. She needed urgent heart surgery, an expensive, complicated surgery that cost a fortune. Through Medicaid, the waiting list was months, and the doctors said she didn't have months. She had weeks, maybe days. My father cried, clinging to my mother in the hospital bed. I, who had just turned 19 the previous June, was terrified. Emily, at 15, wouldn't stop crying. We didn't have money even for a funeral, let alone a surgery that cost tens of thousands of dollars at the time. And then my father did the only thing he could do. He called Grandpa Richard. He begged. He cried on the phone. He asked for God's sake that he save his own daughter's life. And Grandpa, with that calm, controlled voice, said he was going to think about it, that he was going to see what he could do, that he was going to evaluate the situation. A week passed, my mother getting worse every day, my father desperate, and nothing from Grandpa giving an answer. Until one Friday, the phone rang. It was him, saying he was going to pay for the surgery, but that he wanted to settle the details personally. He scheduled a Sunday lunch at his mansion on the first birthday of Gabriel, my cousin Mark's son. He said it would be a family gathering, and that after lunch he was going to settle everything with us. My father was so relieved he almost fainted. I should have been happy, right? My mother was going to be saved. But I felt a tightness in my chest, a bad feeling. I knew my grandfather. I knew he never did anything for free. Everything for him was an exchange, a deal. And I was afraid, very afraid, of what the price would be this time. That Sunday dawned cold, my dears. It was July 1992, the middle of an Iowa winter, the kind where the cold gets into your bones. I woke up early with a tightness in my chest that wouldn't let me breathe right. My mother was still hospitalized, but had gotten authorization from the doctors to go to lunch at Grandpa's house, as long as she returned soon to the hospital. She was so weak, so pale, that she needed help getting dressed. I helped her put on a simple navy blue dress, carefully combed her hair, put light lipstick on her lips to give her a little color. She held my hand and said, "Thank God your grandfather is going to help us, Margaret. We're going to get through this." I forced a smile, but inside I was terrified. We arrived at the mansion around noon. The iron gate was open, and there were already several cars parked in front. The house was decorated with colorful balloons and a banner that read, "Happy Birthday Gabriel, 1-year-old." My cousin Mark and his wife Sarah had organized a birthday party for their baby, and Grandpa had taken the opportunity to turn it into a gathering of the whole family. There were my uncles, aunts, cousins, children running through the garden, music playing. The smell of barbecue came from the backyard where a huge grill had been set up. I entered the house with Emily holding my hand. She was excited about the party, but I was tense. My eyes immediately searched for Grandpa Richard like an animal searches for a predator. He was in the living room, talking to my uncles, dressed in that fancy rancher outfit he liked, starched plaid shirt, dress pants, leather boots. He held a glass of whiskey in his hand, as always, and smoked a cigar. When he saw me enter, he stopped mid-conversation and looked at me. That look. Long, heavy, that undressed me right there in front of everyone. But no one noticed. To them, it was just a grandfather looking at his granddaughter. I quickly looked away and went to the kitchen to help my grandmother Dorothy and the other women arrange the food. The kitchen was huge, all white tile, with stainless steel pots hanging from the ceiling and that industrial stove that looked like something from a restaurant. There were trays of finger foods, bowls of potato salad, homemade rolls, treats for the children. My grandmother was supervising everything, giving orders to the maids, but when she saw me, she opened a warm smile and pulled me into a hug. "My beautiful granddaughter. How's your mother? God is going to heal her. You'll see." I wanted to believe. I wanted to believe that everything would be okay, that that day would end well, that my mother would be saved. But that tightness in my chest wouldn't go away. Lunch was served in the garden, at large tables covered with white tablecloths. There was barbecue, rice, coleslaw, salads, and for dessert, a 3-tier birthday cake decorated with a farm animal theme. Baby Gabriel was sitting in his high chair, all messy with cake, and everyone took photos, laughed, sang happy birthday. I tried to participate, tried to smile, but my eyes couldn't stop looking for Grandpa. He was sitting at the head of one of the tables, commanding everything as always, telling stories, making jokes. But every now and then, he'd look at me. And every time our eyes met, he'd raise his whiskey glass in my direction, as if making a toast just for me. A secret toast, a reminder that he had power over me. After lunch, the children went to play in the garden, and the adults sat talking, drinking coffee and eating desserts. My mother was in a rocking chair, covered with a shawl, breathing with difficulty. My father was beside her, holding her hand. I was near the table where the cake had been placed, helping Sarah organize the party favors. That's when I saw the baby monitor transmitter, those old large white plastic devices with an antenna, on top of the dresser in the hallway leading to the stairs. Sarah had left it there so she could hear if Gabriel woke up from the nap he'd taken after eating. At that moment, Grandpa Richard got up from his chair, lit another cigar, and went to the second-floor balcony. I felt my blood freeze when he turned, looked down, searched for me with his eyes, and made a sign with his head. A discreet sign, but clear. He wanted me to come up. It was time. My heart raced. My hands started shaking. I looked at my mother, so fragile in that chair, depending on that man to live. I looked at my father, humiliated, desperate, with no options. And I knew that if I didn't go up to that office, if I didn't do what he wanted, he would deny the surgery. He would let my mother die. That's when something inside me clicked. A survival instinct, perhaps. Or God's hand guiding me, I don't know. But when I passed through the hallway going toward the stairs, I grabbed that baby monitor transmitter and put it in the deep pocket of my wool coat. I don't know why I did it. It was an impulse. A voice in my head saying, "You're going to need a witness, and no one down here is going to believe you." So I pressed the transmit button and left it on. I climbed those stairs as if I were climbing to the gallows. Each step was heavy, My knees trembled, my breathing was labored. When I reached the second floor, the hallway was empty and silent. The office door was ajar. I pushed slowly and entered. The room was in half light, with heavy curtains closed, and only a dim light from the desk lamp. The smell was the usual: cigars, whiskey, leather. He was sitting in that huge brown leather armchair, with his legs spread, a glass of whiskey in one hand and the cigar in the other. He looked me up and down, slowly, as if evaluating merchandise. "Close the door, Margaret." My voice came out weak, almost a whisper. "Grandpa, are you going to sign the check? My mother needs—" He gave a short, dry laugh, without humor. "Sit in that chair first." I sat in the wooden chair in front of the desk, away from him. My hands were sweating cold. He stared at me in silence for a few eternal seconds, taking slow drags on the cigar, his gaze fixed on me like a predator watching prey. "Margaret, do you know how much your mother's surgery costs? Do you have any idea of the favor I'm going to do for this family?" "I know, Grandpa, and we're very grateful. We'll never forget." "Gratitude doesn't pay bills." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I'm a businessman, Margaret. I don't give anything for free. Everything in life has a price. Your mother wants to live? Great, but I want something in return." My stomach turned. I knew what was coming, but I didn't want to believe it. "What do you want, Grandpa?" He put out the cigar in the ashtray, took a long sip of whiskey, and then stood up. He started walking around the desk, slowly, until he was very close to me. He put his heavy hand on my shoulder, squeezed hard. "You've grown up, Margaret. You've become a beautiful woman, just like your grandmother when she was young." His voice became hoarse, breathless. "And I'm a lonely man. Your grandmother doesn't give me attention anymore. I need affection. Real gratitude." Tears started running down my face. I couldn't speak. He let go of my shoulder and went to his armchair. And then he started unbuckling his belt. Slowly, with his eyes fixed on me. His breathing became heavy, labored. He patted his own legs with his hand and said the phrase that haunts me to this day. "The inheritance will be yours, Margaret. Your mother will have her surgery. Everything will be fine. If you come here and sit on Grandpa's lap now, it's just affection. Special affection. No one needs to know." I felt vomit rising in my throat. I was locked in that office with a monster. A monster who used the love I had for my mother as a weapon against me. I was petrified in that chair, my dears. My whole body trembled, my hands sweated cold, and my mind was screaming for me to run away from there. But my feet wouldn't move. It was as if I were sinking in quicksand, being pulled down, unable to react. I looked at that man, my own grandfather, my blood, sitting in that armchair with his belt open and his hands on his own legs, calling me with that disgusting look, and I thought, this is it. This is my end. Either I do what he wants and carry this mark for the rest of my life, or I refuse, and my mother dies. There's no way out. The air in the office was heavy, suffocating. The smell of cigars mixed with whiskey made me nauseous. The dim light from the lamp created distorted shadows on the walls, making that place seem even more sinister. I could hear my own breathing, fast and shallow, and the tick-tock of the wall clock that seemed to mark every second of my agony. Outside, through the closed window, came muffled sounds from the party. Children's laughter, distant conversations, soft music. A normal, happy, innocent world. So close and yet so far from me. But there was a way out. God knows there was. And the way out was in my pocket, recording every word, every labored breath, every second of that monstrosity. I breathed deeply, felt the cold air fill my lungs, wiped the tears with the back of my hand, and did something I had never done before. I looked straight into his eyes, not with fear, with contempt, with a rage I didn't even know existed inside me. And I spoke loudly, very loudly, articulating each word clearly so that transmitter would capture every syllable. Let me understand correctly, Grandpa. You're saying you'll only pay for the surgery of your own daughter, the mother of your grandchildren, if I— My voice trembled, but I continued. If I rub against you? Is that what you're asking? Is that the price you're charging for your daughter's life? He frowned, surprised by my reaction. He expected me to be submissive, to lower my head, to obey in silence as always. He had trained me for years to be afraid of him, to think he was untouchable, too powerful to be confronted. But something had changed in me at that moment. Maybe because I knew I wasn't alone anymore. Maybe because for the first time in my life, I had a witness, even if invisible. Or maybe because I had reached my absolute limit, that point where you have nothing left to lose, where fear gives way to desperate courage. He gave a low, nervous laugh, adjusted himself in the armchair, and responded with that hoarse, disgusting voice. Don't talk like that, Margaret. You're making it sound like something ugly. It's not rubbing. It's affection. It's gratitude. It's a fair exchange between people who love each other. I give you what you need. You give me what I need. Simple as that. Everyone wins. He patted his legs again, more impatient this time, his breathing getting heavier. Now come on. Take off that coat and come here. It won't hurt. You don't need to be afraid. Grandpa knows how to be affectionate. I'll take good care of you. I felt bile rise in my throat. My stomach turned, and for a second I thought I was going to vomit right there. Every cell in my body screamed for me to run away, but I knew that if I left without guarantees, he would deny everything. He'd say I was lying, that I was a troubled teenager, that I had made it all up to get attention or destroy his reputation. So I needed more. I needed him to say in so many words what he was asking. I needed a complete, clear, undeniable confession. And if I don't do this, Grandpa? My voice came out firmer now, controlled, even with the terror consuming me inside. If I don't give affection the way you want, you're going to let my mother die? Is that it? You're going to deny help to your own daughter if I don't do what you're asking? He leaned forward, his hands gripping the arms of the armchair, his eyes narrowed, his jaw tense. The mask was beginning to fall. He was getting irritated with my questions, with my resistance, with the fact that I wasn't behaving like the obedient victim he expected. Listen here, girl. His voice became harder, colder. I'm not obligated to spend my money on anyone. I worked my whole life to build what I have. If you don't want to cooperate, if you don't want to be grateful, if you don't want to do your part, then your family can figure it out on your own. There's public hospital, isn't there? There's a waiting list for Medicaid. Want to leave your mother waiting months on the list, wasting away, dying slowly? Fine. The choice is yours, Margaret. You're the one who decides. Either you're a good granddaughter and do what I'm asking, or you're selfish and will watch your own mother die because of prudishness. Those words were pure poison. He was inverting everything, making it seem like it was my fault that I was being selfish, that I was condemning my mother. That's the abuser's favorite weapon, my dears. Making the victim feel guilty, making her think she's the problem. I closed my eyes for a second. In my mind, images passed like a fast-forwarded movie. My mother teaching me to make bread, her hands full of flour, smiling. My mother combing my hair before school, humming softly. My mother singing Emily to sleep, her gentle voice filling the dark room. My mother sick, pale, breathing with difficulty, holding my hand in the hospital and saying, "Everything will be okay, my daughter." And then another image. My grandmother Dorothy, strong, elegant, hugging me in the kitchen earlier, saying, "God is going to heal her, you'll see." And that's when I had a clarity, a certainty that went through my body like a ray of light cutting through the darkness. I'm not going to let this monster win. I'm not going to let him break me. I'm not going to carry the guilt that's only his. I opened my eyes and got up from the chair slowly. My legs trembled, but I managed to stand. I took 2 steps back, creating distance between me and him, and spoke with a voice I didn't even know I had inside me. A firm, clear voice, full of a dignity he tried to steal from me, but couldn't. "You're disgusting." The words came out like knives. "You're asking your own granddaughter, 19 years old, to do things that no grandfather should ask. You're using your daughter's life as currency to abuse me. And you think I'm going to shut up? Think no one will ever know about this? You think God isn't watching?" His expression changed instantly. The mask of affectionate grandpa fell completely, shattered on the floor like broken glass. He got up from the armchair in a sudden movement, knocking over the whiskey glass that rolled across the carpet, and came toward me. I backed up until my back hit the bookshelf, the heavy volumes shaking behind me. "You will shut up, yes." His voice was low, threatening, almost an animal growl. "Because who's going to believe you, Margaret? You think anyone down there is going to believe that Colonel Richard, the most respected man in Cedar Falls, friend of the mayor, the sheriff, all the important men in this town, is abusing his granddaughter? They'll say you're crazy, that you're making it up, that you're a slut trying to defame the family. And your father? That failure who can't even support his own family? He depends on me. He won't defend you. He'll be on my side because he needs me." Every word was a stab, and he knew exactly where to stick the knife. He knew me. He knew my fears, my insecurities, my weak points. He had spent years manipulating me, making me think I was small, powerless, insignificant, that no one would listen to me, that his word was worth more than mine. But this time he was wrong, because down there, while he spewed all that poison, the baby monitor receiver was transmitting every word. Every threat, every confession, every second of that monstrosity was being heard by dozens of people. And the party music had stopped, the conversations had ceased, the children had stopped playing, and a heavy, tense, shocked silence had taken over the entire garden. I didn't know yet, but at that exact moment my grandmother Dorothy was standing next to the cake table, her hand trembling at her mouth, her eyes wide with horror, hearing her husband's voice, the man she had shared 40 years of life with, echo from that white receiver. "You will shut up, yes. You think anyone will believe you?" My father had dropped his coffee cup on the ground, the porcelain shattering, the dark liquid spreading on the grass like a bloodstain. My mother, even weak and sick, had gotten up from the rocking chair with a strength no one knew she still had. Her pale face, taken by disbelief, pain, absolute horror at discovering that her own father was doing this to her daughter. My uncles, aunts, cousins, my cousin Mark's wife with baby Gabriel in her arms. Everyone was frozen, petrified, listening to that live transmission of a horror that no one wanted to believe, but that was happening right above their heads. But I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that I was alone in that office with a predator, and that my only chance of surviving was to buy time. Buy time until someone, somehow, heard me. Buy time until the truth reached downstairs. I held tight to the coat pocket, feeling the hot transmitter against my hand, pulsing like a second heart. And I breathed deeply. "You can threaten all you want, Grandpa." My voice came out trembling, but clear. "But God is watching. And sooner or later, the truth always comes out, always." He was going to respond. He opened his mouth, his eyes injected with anger and hate, his finger pointed at me like a weapon. But before he said anything, we heard it. Footsteps, many footsteps, running up the stairs, voices screaming, an explosion of heavy steps running up, stumbling on the steps like an uncontrolled stampede. And then a scream that went through the entire house that made the walls shake. "You bastard!" The office door shook hard. Someone pounded with their fist on the outside, the wood rattling on the hinges. My father was shouting from the other side, "Open this door! Open it now! Margaret, are you in there?" Grandpa Richard's face went white, completely white. The color drained from his face as if someone had pulled a curtain. He looked at the door, then at me, and for the first time in my life I saw fear in his eyes. Pure, absolute fear, the fear of a man who just realized that his mask had been torn off in front of everyone. And I knew. He had been exposed. The monster had been revealed. The truth had screamed louder than all his lies, and there was no going back. The door shook again, and again. I heard voices overlapping on the other side. My father, my uncles, people screaming, demanding they open up. Grandpa Richard was standing in the middle of the office, completely paralyzed, his face white as paper. He looked at the door as if he were seeing his own death arrive. His hands trembled. The arrogance, that absolute certainty that he was untouchable, had evaporated in seconds. I remained pressed against the bookshelf, my heart beating so hard I thought it was going to explode in my chest. I wanted to scream, wanted to answer my father that I was okay, but my voice was gone. It was stuck in my throat, along with all the fear, all the anger, all the trauma from those eternal minutes. And then came the final blow. A kick, strong, violent, accurate. The door opened with a crash, the lock ripped from the wood, and my father entered like a hurricane. Behind him came my uncles, Uncle George, Uncle William, Uncle Thomas, all with their faces red with rage, their hands closed in fists. They had heard everything, every word, every threat, every second of that monstrosity. My father saw me first, huddled in the corner, and came running toward me. "Margaret, my daughter!" He pulled me into a tight hug, his body shaking as much as mine. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" I shook my head, unable to speak. Tears ran non-stop down my face, wetting his shirt. He held me tight, as if trying to protect me from something that had already passed, but still hurt as if it were happening. Meanwhile, my uncles advanced on Grandpa Richard. Uncle George, the oldest of his sons, grabbed Grandpa by his shirt collar and pushed him against the wall. "You monster!" His voice was a roar. "You bastard! How could you do this? To your own granddaughter, to Elizabeth's daughter!" Grandpa tried to break free, tried to recover that powerful man posture, but couldn't. He was cornered, defeated. For the first time in his life, he was smaller than the people around him. "You don't understand," he stammered, his voice coming out weak. "It wasn't like that. She misunderstood. We heard everything." Uncle William advanced too, his finger pointed at his face. "Every word of yours was transmitted through the baby monitor. Everyone down there heard. You asking her to sit on your lap, you threatening her, you saying no one would believe her." It was at that moment that my grandmother Dorothy entered the office. She had climbed slower than the men, but when she entered, it was as if the entire air changed. She wasn't running. She wasn't screaming. She walked with that elegance of hers, her head held high, her shoulders straight, but with an expression on her face I had never seen before. It wasn't anger. It was something much worse. It was absolute disappointment. It was disgust. It was the end of an illusion that had lasted decades. She crossed the office in silence, past her sons, past my father who was still holding me, and stopped right in front of her husband, the man she had married over 40 years ago. The man she had admired, supported, defended her entire life. And then she did something no one expected. She raised her hand and slapped him across the face, a hard, dry slap that echoed throughout the office like thunder. The cigar he was holding fell to the floor and rolled under the desk. Grandpa Richard put his hand to his face, shocked, looking at his wife as if he couldn't believe what had happened. "Dorothy, shut your mouth." Her voice was low, but cutting like glass. "Don't you dare speak my name with that filthy mouth. All these years I defended you. I believed in you. I thought you were a man of honor, but you're not. You're a worm, a predator, disguised as a patriarch." She turned to me, and her hardened face softened a little. She came to where I was, gently moved my father aside, and hugged me. A firm, protective hug, full of a love I needed so much to feel at that moment. "You were very brave, my granddaughter," she whispered in my ear. "You saved yourself. and you saved other girls he could have hurt in the future." She pulled away, wiped my tears with her thumb, and then turned back to her husband. The mask of hardness returned to her face instantly. "Listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you, Richard." She spoke loudly, so everyone could hear. "Starting today, you have no more control over anything in this family. I'm going to take over all the accounts, all the businesses, all the properties. You're going to sign the papers transferring everything to me, and you're going to pay for Elizabeth's surgery tomorrow, not because of you, but because I'm not going to let my daughter die because of your rottenness. You can't do this." He tried to argue, but his voice came out weak, pathetic. "The properties are in my name. They may be in your name, but the money to buy them came from my family." She crossed her arms. "Did you forget? When you were just a poor accountant, it was my father who gave you the initial capital to start your businesses. I have all the documents that prove it, and I'll use them if necessary. But I think you won't want me to do this publicly, will you? Because then everyone will know not only that you're an abuser, but also that you built your empire with money that wasn't yours." The silence that fell in the office was heavy, dense. Grandpa Richard realized he was cornered. He looked at his sons, at his son-in-law, but found no support. He only found looks of disgust, anger, disappointment. "You're going to sign the papers," my Uncle George repeated, his voice firm. "And you're going to do it tomorrow morning, at the notary's office. If you refuse, we're going to the police. We're going to expose you publicly, and you'll lose not only the money, but also the reputation you prize so much." Grandpa lowered his head. For the first time in his life, he was forced to yield. Forced to accept that he had lost control. That the consequences of his actions had finally arrived. My grandmother took my hand and my father's hand. "Let's get out of here. David, take your daughter home. Elizabeth will have her surgery this week. I'll personally take care of all the details. And you, Margaret." She squeezed my hand hard. "You won't need to come to this house anymore. You're free from him." We went down those stairs, and down there the party had turned into a wake. People were in silence, some crying, others hugging. No one really knew what to say. My mother was sitting again in the chair, with Emily clinging to her, both crying together. When she saw me, she opened her arms, and I ran to her. We hugged there, in the middle of that garden, surrounded by people who had heard everything, who knew everything, but who were now on our side. What happened in the following days was like a whirlwind, my dears. My grandmother Dorothy kept every word she had said. The next day, she dragged Grandpa Richard to the notary's office with my uncles as witnesses and made him transfer all the assets to her name. She took total control of everything, the farms, the properties, the investments, the accounts, and she paid for my mother's surgery that same day. My mother was operated on 3 days later. It was a long, complicated surgery, but thank God she survived. She stayed hospitalized for 2 weeks, but when she left the hospital, she was alive. Weak, but alive. And that was all that mattered. As for Grandpa Richard, he never had power over anyone again. My grandmother had him declared legally incompetent, declared him incapable of managing his own assets due to mental imbalance, with the help of a lawyer and a psychiatric report. He spent the last 10 years of his life locked in that same office where he had tried to abuse me, alone, without visits, without anyone to talk to. The family itself isolated him. He died in 2002, at 83 years old, and only my grandmother went to his funeral. Not out of love, but out of obligation to close a rotten chapter of her life. I, my dears, learned that day the most important lesson of my life. The truth always finds a way to be heard. And when you have nothing left to lose, you discover a strength you didn't even know existed inside you. And here I am today, my dears, at 52 years old, back in that same simple kitchen where I started this story with you. The sweet smell of peach and fig preserves still boils on the stove, the steam rising and fogging the windows. But now, when I look at these little jars lined up on the counter, I don't just see fruit and syrup. I see freedom. I see a new beginning. I see a woman who survived and who built a good life on the ashes of what could have been a tragic end. My life today is simple, sweetheart, but it's a chosen, conquered simplicity, full of meaning. I retired 5 years ago from work at City Hall, where I worked for 23 years as an administrative assistant. It was a quiet, honest job that allowed me to support my family with dignity. I got married in 1995, 3 years after that terrible Sunday, to a good man named Robert, a history teacher at the public high school. We met at a summer fair here in Cedar Falls, and he was the first person I was able to talk openly with about what had happened to me. He listened without judgment, held my hand and said, "You're the strongest woman I've ever met." We had 2 children, Daniel, who's 27 today, and works as a nurse at the regional hospital, and Amanda, 24, who's a math teacher. They're both my pride, my joy, proof that I managed to break the cycle of pain and create a healthy, loving family where no one is afraid of anyone. Robert passed away 4 years ago from a sudden heart attack. It was an immense pain, a loss that left me on my knees for months. But life taught me that we survive. We always survive. Today I live alone in this little 3-bedroom house in the West Side neighborhood here in Cedar Falls. It's a small house but cozy, with a little living room where I embroider tablecloths on cold winter afternoons, and this kitchen where I spend hours and hours preparing my preserves and sweets. Every Friday I sell my homemade goods at the farmer's market that happens on Main Street downtown. I set up a simple little stand with a crocheted tablecloth that I made myself covering the table and display my jars of preserves, my pumpkin and milk candies, my cornbread wrapped in wax paper. It's not a big business. No. I do it more out of love than necessity. My pension is enough to live comfortably. But I like the contact with people, chatting with neighbors, hearing their stories while they try a piece of my fudge. There's a lady, Mrs. Helen, who always buys 3 jars of peach preserves and says they're for her grandchildren, but I know she eats them all herself. We laugh, we chat, and these small moments fill my heart. My mother, Elizabeth, lived another 20 years after that surgery. She passed away in 2012 at 70 years old from natural causes, sleeping peacefully in her bed. I was beside her, holding her hand, when she passed. And before closing her eyes, she said to me, "Thank you for being so brave, my daughter. You saved me, and you saved yourself." Those were the last words she said to me, and I keep them like a treasure. She lived long enough to see her grandchildren grow up, to dance at Daniel's wedding, to see me happy. And that for me was already an immense victory. My sister Emily lives here in Cedar Falls too, about 15 minutes from my house. She's married, has 3 children, and works as a social worker. We see each other almost every day. She comes here to have coffee with me on Saturday afternoons, and we talk about everything, about the kids, about the good memories from childhood, about life. We never talked much about that Sunday again. We don't need to. We know what happened. We carry the scars, but we don't let it define who we are today. My grandmother Dorothy lived to be 91 years old. She passed away in 2015, lucid, strong, until the end. I visited her every week at the mansion downtown, that house that was once the scene of horror, but that my grandmother transformed into a real home after she expelled my grandfather from there. She created a space of welcome where the family gathered without fear, without tension. Before she died, she called me alone to her room, held my hand with those wrinkled but still firm hands, and said, "Margaret, you were the bravest of all of us. You did what I didn't have the courage to do for decades. Thank you for saving this family." I cried a lot that day. And when she passed, I cried again, but with gratitude for having had such an extraordinary grandmother. Today, my Sundays are different from that Sunday in 1992. Today, I wake up early, have my coffee with homemade bread and apple butter, and go to the 8 o'clock Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Then I come back home, put soft music on the radio, and stay here in the kitchen, preparing my preserves, my sweets, my breads. In the afternoon, my children and grandchildren come to visit me. Daniel brings his son, little Michael, who's 3 years old, who runs through the house shouting, "Grandma, Grandma," and hangs on my legs. Amanda brings Sophie, 1-year-old, all chubby and smiley. And we sit in the living room, eat cake, drink coffee, and laugh. We laugh a lot. I look at these grandchildren, my dears, and I think, they'll never know what it's like to be afraid inside their own family. They'll never feel what I felt. Because I broke that cycle. I screamed when I needed to scream. I fought when I needed to fight. And I won. My dears, I know this story was heavy. I know that many of you who are watching me now might be going through something similar or know someone who is. And that's why I needed to tell it. Because silence is the abuser's most powerful weapon. Silence is what keeps these creatures disguised as family men, as respectable patriarchs in power. If you're being manipulated by someone in your own family, an uncle, a grandfather, a stepfather, anyone who uses their power, money, or position to control and abuse you, listen carefully to what this grandma here is going to tell you. You're not alone, and you're not to blame. The abuser will try to make you believe that no one will listen to you, that you're too weak, that he's too powerful. But that's a lie, pure lie. I was 19 years old and thought I was cornered. I thought if I spoke, no one would believe me. But you know what I learned? That the truth has a weight that no lie can carry. Even when it seems there's no way out, there always is. It could be a person who listens to you. It could be a recording. It could be a camera. It could be God putting an idea in your head at the right time. Like He put in mine when I grabbed that baby monitor. I transformed my fear into courage. I transformed my pain into testimony. I used His own arrogance against Him. And you can too. You can record, you can film, you can tell someone you trust, you can seek help from women and children, protection organizations in your country, in your city. No matter where you are, United States, Canada, anywhere, there are people and institutions ready to help you. Seek local authorities, seek your community, seek your church if you have faith. Don't carry this weight alone. And for those of you who are mothers, fathers, grandparents, uncles, and aunts, pay attention to the signs. Look at the children in the family carefully. Ask them how they are. Create an environment where they can speak without fear. Because if there had been someone in my family paying attention earlier, maybe that Sunday would never have happened. I survived because I didn't stay silent. I won because I found a way to make the truth scream louder than his threats. And look where I am today. Alive, free, happy, surrounded by grandchildren who will never go through what I went through. That's victory, my dears. That's a new beginning. That's proof that evil doesn't always win. So now, I want to make a request that comes from the bottom of my heart, my dears. If this story moved you, if it made you think of someone who needs to hear this, I beg you, subscribe to this channel now and hit that notification bell. Don't leave it for later. Don't think, oh, I'll do it later. Do it now, in this exact second, because maybe in an hour, a woman, a girl, someone you love might need this message of hope and won't find it if you don't share. These stories I tell here aren't just to entertain. They're to save lives. They're to show that we can survive. They're to give strength to those who are at rock bottom thinking there's no way out. You who are watching me now can be God's instrument to take this message to someone. Share this video. Send it to your sister, your cousin, your neighbor. You don't know who needs to hear this today. And now I want you to tell me here in the comments, what city are you watching me from? And what time of day are you here with me? Is it early morning having your coffee? Is it lunchtime taking a little break? Or is it nighttime and you're there in bed reflecting on life? Tell me, because I want to know where the angels are that God placed to hear these stories. Tell me your city, your state, and the time you're watching me. Let's create a chain of strength that crosses cities, states, entire countries. And if you or someone you know is going through something similar to what I went through, If there's someone in your family manipulating you, controlling you, hurting you, send me a message, leave me a comment, tell me. You don't need to give details if you don't want to, but let me know you're there, that you heard me, that you understood you're not alone. I read all the comments, each one of them, and I pray for every soul that reaches me. Do it now. Don't wait even one more second. Because at this exact moment, while you're here listening to me, there's someone suffering in silence, thinking there's no way. And you can be the person who will change their life today. Your hands, your phone, your decision to share this video can save a life. Do you understand the responsibility and power you have in your hands now? And always remember, my son, my daughter, you're stronger than you imagine. The truth always, always wins. And God never, never abandons those who fight for justice and truth. A huge kiss to the heart of each one of you, from every city, from every corner of this country and this world. May God bless you, your families, and illuminate the path of all who need courage today.